Under the Congressional Review Act, House Republicans can go to the floor this week and they can try to undo every single regulation that was issued by the Biden administration from August of last year to Inauguration Day. So what does their bill do? Well, it would allow the majority to roll up lots of midnight regulations and lots of others too, including what you might call twilight, midday, and early morning regulations. Indeed, all of the regulations adopted in the final 365 days of the prior administration, an entire year that takes place at midnight. All the regulations adopted in the last year could be tied together into a bundle, wrapped up together in a giant bunch, and then voted down as a single jumbo resolution. This tactic could be used to try to get Congress to eliminate no fewer, by my count, than 355 major regulations from the last year of Joe Biden in one fell swoop, forcing every member to vote either to sustain all of the regulations or to overturn and destroy all of them. And by destroying them, that means the agencies could not try to promulgate similar regulations in the future without an act of Congress. This would allow Trump's enablers and the sheep-like new Elon Muskovites in Congress to obliterate hundreds of completely diverse and unrelated regulations in one fell swoop. Everything from, these are regulations that were adopted over the last year, everything from removing lead from drinking water to making cell phones compatible with hearing aids, to creating safety standards for infant bath seats, to implementing the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Mr. Speaker, the reason that 43 states have constitutional or statutory single-subject rules for policy legislation, initiatives, and referendum is because voting on completely different subjects at the same time is a moronic way to govern and an invitation to political manipulation of the will of the people. What's a member to do if he or she strongly approves of, say, overturning 20% of these rules, but strongly opposes overturning 80% of them? This weird dilemma makes us ask why we would even want to force such a choice. After all, the vast majority of America rejects this whole concept. Well, the obvious purpose of this bizarre legislation is to get Republicans to vote to repeal extremely popular common sense regulations, but then try to enable them to escape the political consequences of doing so. Look, consider some of the Biden administration regulations which they would tuck into this monstrosity omnibus midnight relief resolution, and decide if you're willing to vote to overturn them, even if they're tucked in with some infamous washing machine regulation they love talking about. Consider this one from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It cuts credit card late fees from an average of $32 to $8, meaning your credit card company cannot charge you more than $8 for late fees because the CFPB brought a suit and determined that's the whole administrative cost of a late fee. It didn't say the credit card companies couldn't charge anything, but it said when they're charging you $32, that's just a ripoff. Now, our friends on that side of the aisle want to repeal this regulation because they insist it violates their precious laissez-faire principle. That is, let the credit card companies do whatever they want. But when it comes to leaving middle-class and working-class consumers to the mercy of gigantic credit card companies, my friends, laissez isn't fair. At least that's what the Democrats think, and we will stand up for this regulation. But if you think the credit card companies should be restored their power to charge whatever they want for late fees, way beyond their actual administrative expenses, then by all means support the Republicans' bill. Elon Musk and the billionaires will love you for it. Musk did, after all, just sign an agreement with Visa for his X wallet. Another rule Republicans could add to their giant bundle is from the Department of Transportation, which requires the airlines to provide automatic refunds when your flight is canceled, and to disclose upfront baggage and flight change fees. It used to be they could cancel your flight and just say, well, we'll give you another flight in the future at some point. The Department of Transportation determined that's not fair. If they cancel your flight, you get a refund, and if you want to fly later, or you want to go take a train or find another mode of transportation, you could do it. Now, they could throw that into the big bonfire of regulation destruction they're so excited about, and then you could consign your rights back to the microscopic fine print on the back of your airplane ticket, rather than having the consumer champions at the Department of Transportation trying to stand up for the people. So if you want the airlines to have that power over you, go ahead and vote for the GOP bill. Support laissez-faire, more laissez-faire for the billionaires. Strike a blow against the reviled Bidenomics. Give yourself all the airline inconvenience you want. Another rule that they would throw in is the FTC's wildly popular click-to-cancel rule, mandating that it should be just as easy to cancel a service advertised online as it is to sign up for it. The American people love that, right? If you want to go back to the days when it was easy as ABC 123 to sign up for an online service, but then like the 12 labors of Hercules to try to get out of it when you no longer need it, then by all means support this great laissez-faire Republican bill. Strike a blow against the big, bad, evil, mean, wicked, terrible regulations. If you fall for all that propaganda and you're more afraid of the big, bad, evil regulations than the big, bad, evil corporations, go ahead and vote for it. The unelected billionaire bureaucrat and his nameless, faceless, racist junior bureaucrats in the Muscovite nighttime wrecking ball crew will be thrilled if you vote for it. Another rule that's up for reversal is the CFPB regulation capping bank overdraft fees at $5. My constituents in Maryland, they might not be as rich as some of the constituents over on the other side. They were getting overdraft charges of $35. They didn't like that. So they support the CFPB regulation capping overdraft fees from banks at $5, which is at most what it costs the banks to process it. That practice was costing American consumers, mostly young people, mostly older people, working class people, $5 billion a year. So Biden's new $5 rule, that's the max for overdraft fees. Not a rule, a dreadful regulation, cut overdraft fees by more than 80%. And guess what? The banks didn't go bankrupt. They've never been wealthier or healthier. Record profits in the last quarter, even with consumer safety regulation, which we're supposed to be so terrified about. Go ahead, vote for the big banks and Elon Musk and the Republicans, and vote against your own interests. You can lift the $5 overdraft fee. I'd be interested what the gentleman thinks it should be. $30, $40, I don't know. Finally, consider an HHS rule that you could be forced to vote for in advancing the big omnibus package they want. A ban on junk health insurance plans that rip our people off when they need health care the most and are most desperate. That's an HHS rule. And the Republicans say that that rule should be repealed because, well, I guess the low-quality health insurance companies don't want to rip you off, right? Well, if you believe that, then by all means vote for the bill. And instead of considering these regulations one at a time on their own merits and then voting on them transparently and publicly as current law requires, as the vast majority of state constitutions and state legislatures require, this Republican bill would give Congress the power to wipe out all of these rules and hundreds of others in one single massive party line vote, which completely pulls the wool over the eyes of the American people. And why do it? They haven't said. They haven't said. They just want it to slide through. Well, they want to throw all these excellent regulations supported by the vast majority of American people with a couple regulations that I've heard them talk about when I ask them why they want to do it, about washing machines. All right, say you don't like those washing machine regulations. Make your argument to Congress. Let's debate it and discuss it. Maybe you'll convince me. We'll give it an up or down vote. Each regulation gets its own vote. What's wrong with that? But no, they want to flood the zone with confusion and treat the people like sheep, not citizens. They don't want their constituents to notice the damage they're inflicting on the public good. When I first heard about this legislative ripoff, I actually wanted to get in touch with the distinguished gentleman from Arizona, Representative Andy Biggs, because I remembered that he was the proud and impassioned sponsor of H.R. 91, which he introduced just a few weeks ago, January 16th, 2025, a very impressive bill. Guess what it's called? The One Bill, One Subject Transparency Act. Let me repeat that. The One Bill, One Subject Transparency Act. That's his bill. And I love the fact that he's been fighting for that. His bill, quote, requires each bill or joint resolution to include no more than one subject, and the subject to be clearly and descriptively expressed in the measure's title. Now, the Midnight Regulation Kitchen Sink bill would violate everything that I thought Congressman Biggs believes about the legislative process. Members should be voting on one subject or one regulation at a time, not a dozen different subjects, not 100 different regulations in a single resolution. And the title of the bill should indeed clearly and descriptively communicate exactly what we are voting on, which means one thing. But amazingly, before I could get to find Representative Biggs to tell him that we had to get together across party lines to stop this new monstrosity I heard about, I was told by my staff that he was actually the author of the Midnight Rules Relief Act. I couldn't believe it. I was dumbfounded and gobstopped. The lead sponsor of the One Bill, One Subject Transparency Act was now advocating this massive conglomeration of subjects and regulations, a huge legislative stew, a gumbo where poison pills and healthy vegetables are mixed up freely into one toxic, indigestible, incomprehensible meal. Amazing to me. This is the cynical tactic that I thought my friends in the Freedom Caucus have for years been complaining about. The passage of bewilderingly complex and inscrutable legislation covering way too many subjects at once. As Mr. Biggs' press release on his bill stated, too often congressional leaders use must-pass bills as methods for passing laws that may have failed if considered on their own. And I'll have some more to say about things that he has said about it in the past. But look, he had a solution to all of these tactics of political dishonesty. The One Bill, One Subject Transparency Act would require that every bill considered by the House encompass no more than one subject at a time. Let me repeat that. No more than one subject at a time. And if a bill addresses two or more, guess what? The bill becomes void. And so I'm going to stand up for that principle today that I thought once unified us. Borrowing from his own statements, I have proposed also an amendment to the Midnight Rules Relief Act. Using language taken directly from his legislation, verbatim, I propose that any resolution we consider overturning agency regulations should be limited to a single subject. And if the resolution attempts to nullify regulations in two or more diverse areas, the resolution becomes, of course, null and void. The whole point of the One Bill, One Subject House Republican movement, led by the distinguished gentleman from Arizona, is that Congress should not be destroying legislative transparency or accountability by shoving unrelated packages into a single moving legislative vehicle. By the way, please spare me any lame rebuttal that we don't have time to actually do our jobs and hear each bill on its own, an argument that my Freedom Caucus friends have rightfully shown contempt for when raised in the past. If you want to repeal the $5 bank overdraft fee or the clean water rule or the click-to-council rule, be my guest. We have all the time in the world to debate why you want to overthrow the $5 bank overdraft rule. This week, the Republicans have brought a grand total of 3 bills to the floor, I think it is. We had some procedural minutia. 3 bills. We've got nothing but time here. They've got no agenda. Their whole agenda has been sidelined and supplanted by Elon Musk, who I thought was the 4th branch of government. Now he seems to be the 1st branch of government, too, as my colleagues across the aisle simply want Elon Musk to do their jobs. We've got members in committee thanking him for doing such great oversight. Gee, I thought that Chairman Comer on the Oversight Committee was supposed to be doing oversight. I didn't think we needed a new 4th branch of government called Elon Musk to do that, completely lawless and reckless and replete with conflicts of interest. But I digress. 24 resolutions of disapproval of specific regulations have actually been introduced in this Congress. You know how many of those resolutions of disapproval have been taken up in committees of jurisdiction? 0. You know how many have been brought to the floor of the House by my colleagues who are so exercised about big, bad, terrible, evil, mean regulation? None of them. They've not brought a single regulation forward. They've done nothing on regulations with all the time in the world. Now they want to destroy every principle they claim to adhere to in terms of legislation on the floor of the House of Representatives. The truth is that these Republican politicians are terrified to overturn these regulations in broad daylight. They know America supports them, so they should show some courage. Stand up for your anti-working class, anti-middle class, plutocratic principles. Go ahead and vote to destroy the $5 bank overdraft rule, but do it openly, do it clearly, do it one by one. Take each one on. We'll stay here with you all day. We'll even work a 9-to-5 day, something we haven't seen around here in a long time. We'll work 8 hours. We'll work 12 hours. If you want to get into the details of it, let's do our jobs. For real. I dare you, all you single subject zealots out there, oppose this embarrassing, humiliating Midnight Rules Relief Act. I reserve.